fireside chat. So first, anybody has any questions about this, what Olivier said? Prasad Garu and Ashok, of course, and Kal Maiku. So Dr. Prasad is my company's main technical head, and he's he's on the field dealing with a lot of issues. So I'm sure he has. Go ahead, Prasad Garu.
Sir, I'm asking relating to our commercial farms, especially in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and other things. Generally, we are observing H9 infection regularly, sir. But where we are not observing any high mortalities, but production loss we are observing. Along with that, whenever the seasonal changes or stress factors are there, in few farms, H5 infection also we are observing. Regarding this control as a prophylactic, even though in India it is not allowable, but we are doing unofficially. At that time, are you recommending using the both H5, H9 together, whether it will have impact in controlling the infection? That is the one question.
Yeah. So the question is to the use of both vaccines against H5, H7.
Yeah.
H9.
No, sir.
H9. Ah, okay.
H9 it is a low pathogen.
H9 is almost endemic now. It's there always.
Yeah.
When the stress factors increase, is when we are noticing H5 infections coming.
Yes, and it's true that, interestingly, H5 will not, or even HPAI H5 will not always create big mortality in broilers especially, but sometimes also in layers. It's a bit surprising. Regarding common vaccination, for example, the Chinese do vaccinate against H5 and H7 together. They go and protect against the two strains. I have no experience, sir, I'm sorry to say, about H5 and H9 together. There is no reason why it shouldn't be done. I don't anticipate any safety issue with that. But as you well know, the cross-protection, especially with inactivated vaccine between H5 and H9, is not very good. So there is an added reason where this combination could be done. But I have no experience with that, direct experience with that. So I have to be a bit careful on this.
Thank you.
Ashok?
Sir, is there any chance that use of regular vaccines, HPAI or LPI, they promote the emergence of new strains?
So he wants to know if the usage of vaccines can result in new strains being...
Emergence of new strains.
Oh, very good question, and thank you very much for asking it. Again, the answer is a bit complicated. The truth is that if you use a vaccine, especially in a case where not everything around you is vaccinated, if you have holes in the field of vaccination around you, you will facilitate indeed that the virus will find a way to evade the vaccine, mutate, and change. So that's very true. Also, the timing of vaccination plays a role. In preventive vaccination, let's imagine you start vaccinating laying hens in a country. By the time you get all producing laying hens vaccinated, you need almost a full year. It takes a while. So there are reasons to have holes, and there is a possibility of the vaccine to mutate. With that said, most of the vaccines we use are inactivated, and so because they are very specific but bring no cross-protection, also allow the vaccine to mutate. If you use some other categories of vaccines, then you have better cross-protection, like vector vaccine or subunit vaccines or even genomic vaccines. You will have better cross-protection and less opportunity for the virus to mutate. Eventually, also, if you vaccinate properly, you will massively decrease the release of viruses by the animals and the risk of transmission. And we have demonstrated that now very beautifully in Europe. We can show that vaccinating animals will massively decrease transmission. So, bottom line, when you vaccinate properly, you decrease your risk massively, even of mutation. If you don't vaccinate properly, and I'll take one of the countries, or 2 or 3 of the countries that I've shown on my slide that vaccinate against endemic HPAI for a long time, they let farmers do what they want. Some vaccinate, some not, and guess what? The situation is very bad because the virus continues to mutate, and that's not a proper result. That's why I insist on the slide, vaccination plan. If you want to vaccinate, except in emergency vaccination, where, of course, that's a different matter. But if you want to vaccinate preventively, you need to have a good coverage of your laying hen population. Long answer for,
no, that's I think,
a very good question.
I learned a lot of my questions were answered. Thank you for that. So I'm happy for that answer.
Yeah. Hi, Olivier.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Vijay. So a couple of questions with regards to the presentation. First, can you talk about the countries which are already vaccinating? So how they are doing the zero surveillance mechanism after the vaccination, so that there is a data available for them to track how the vaccines are being performing in terms of protection. And second, what's your views that top 5 or top 10 poultry markets in the world, they are yet to, initiate vaccination? For example, when we talk to officials in country, they always refer to US, Thailand, the big markets. They are yet to initiate HPAI vaccination in commercials. So do you have some insights on these 2 questions?
So one on the US.
I think one is asking how is the surveillance happening, in how are some countries managing that?
Yeah.
And 2, he wants to know why are the big markets not yet.
Yeah, very good. So including the US. Thank you so much. So surveillance. I could simplify this by saying that if you send regularly your dead animals to a lab for PCR, you have already done 80% of good surveillance. Where it gets more complicated, say, how many birds, how many times, and how many farms. In Europe, the rule is, and especially in France, where they vaccinate, you send dead birds every week to the lab for PCR. You have also a veterinarian visiting the farms every month for checking the birds and doing some controls, random controls, and you do serologies. Serologies are very good, but they are a lagging indicator. You will detect antibodies 2 or 3 weeks after the virus has, visited your farm. So, because sometimes you will have once a year. So serologies are good for verifying the quality of the vaccination, but we can put them aside for surveillance of the virus. It's really about sending regularly dead birds to the lab for PCR, and also, of course, having some random sampling in a population. So that's what they do. Today, you send, the French farmers do send every week. I think the rule will change and it will be every other week, because we've seen that we have enough control, apparently, with sending birds every 2 weeks. And there are some traps in that, because sometimes you don't have enough dead birds. You need to send 5 and you don't have enough, so you pick up some other bird that is healthy, so there are holes in that. Sometimes the farmers don't visit all the buildings. They will pick up the dead birds just at the beginning, and so they will ignore part of the farm that may be more exposed to HPAI. So nothing is ideal, but the surveillance is very heavy because of that, because you need to send birds to PCR lab every other week or in Why are not the big countries vaccinating like the US? Because of trade. Because if you start vaccinating, as I said, you will lose some markets, and it will take a long, long while to get them back, sometimes years. And so they don't want to run that risk. What they do in the US, and we have some US people here in the room, they might comment on that, but they are preparing a vaccination plan. It should have been released by now, but they have not released it yet, I believe. And once this vaccination plan is announced and approved by all stakeholders, they will discuss with trade partners and ask, if we apply this vaccination plan and this surveillance plan, will you allow us to export to you? So they will do it, but in a preventative way, in order to be sure to be able to use vaccination if they need. There is huge pressure of the laying industry in the US, for example, to vaccinate. There is huge pressure of the turkey industry to vaccinate. The turkey are losing a lot of flocks right now in Indiana. So, yeah, that trade is a main reason. I would add that the cost of surveillance is also something that is a bit difficult to convince farmers and government to pay for it.
Yeah, and if I may add, I think it's a funny situation in some sense. It's all about the large exporting countries, especially US and Brazil, and the issue is primarily from the broiler side. Everybody else wants it done, but there's big trade, right? So they're both. It's like the first penguin, right? I mean, whoever does it first, because Brazil doesn't want to say till it says US says yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, and US is like, you know, and so it's a little bit of that happening. Somebody needs to work on bringing everybody onto the table. And then, of course, there's industry, then there's government, and then, you know, so mostly there's not much interaction happening on that at international level. So, but I think it's moving forward now. I think even in US, they've realized the egg prices that has happened has made them realize that it's a crazy situation, that they can't keep killing healthy birds. And when mostly the rest of the world is doing it now. I didn't see China on your list of countries doing vaccines, but they are doing, right?
Yeah, quite right. I did forget China. China vaccinates systematically against H5, H7. How is the quality of vaccination? I cannot comment on that. They have some outbreaks from time to time. So I suppose that the quality of vaccination is not always 100% tight. But frankly, if you ask Chinese scientists about vaccination, they are very happy with it. And they don't want to move away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can comment on the quality of Chinese vaccinations, at least that the one we get here, they don't seem to be working very well. But anyway, that's a second. Julian, you wanted to say something?
Before we move on from the issue around cost of surveillance and trade, Olivier, could you just comment a little on the moves in European Union to consider reducing surveillance costs for industry, and perhaps just mention the Dutch and the French experience of either trying to prevent markets being shut or trying to get them back?
So on the surveillance aspect, right, on the cost of it, I think the Dutch and the French are thinking about how to reduce the
yeah, that's the comment I was doing before, Julian. You can decrease the frequency by which you send birds to the lab. You can decrease the number of farms, and you can decrease the number of birds you send. So they are playing with that. Normally, and what I expect, but normally it should cut the cost of surveillance by half. So that's what we are hoping for.
And I think if I can translate that for our Indian farmers, in Europe, they are not picking up the dead birds like multiple times a day like we do. Sometimes they don't go into the, I think they probably don't even go into the shed every day. because everything is automated to a large extent. So, but in India, I think we pick up a dead bird almost within few hours. You will rarely find, but I think that's one of the issues, challenges that the Western world has, the cost of surveillance, which is going to be something for us too, but I think it's something we can maybe easily manage that. So, yeah.
There are other options for decreasing the cost of surveillance, which is environmental surveillance, which is very cheap. We know that if you manage to do some samples in your environment, you can really, it's much less costly, and you can really improve the sensitivity of your surveillance. So there will be developments there, but it's going to take a bit more time.
Yeah, I know one startup here is talking about, they've developed kind of like a sensor which can just monitor the air and give us what's happening and what are the pathogens in the house. So I think, yeah, we'll be talking to them soon. So, but yeah, so.
And exactly, because to be honest, in some of the big laying hens in the US, we still don't understand exactly how the virus comes in. We know it's the wild birds, but how it gets in is still a bit of a mystery. I think the US Poultry and Egg Association is doing some research on that, and hopefully we'll get more insights on how to prevent the virus to come in. I think the US egg and poultry industry stands up and wants maybe to say a word. That would be very useful,
Yeah.
Nathan.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. I did want to touch a little bit on your comment on the strategy. There is a strategy that is in place now. It kind of came from the USDA government. It has not been released yet, and it may be made public sometime in early 2026. But I also will say that there was $100 million worth of grants that were given out to research on developing a vaccine, to look at therapeutics, to look at environment and biosecurity. So those 4 areas will be considered specifically. And even if the trade, exactly as you said, the trade is a big issue. And even if a strategy is approved, there's not a vaccine right now that is approved in the U.S. So, I mean, they're looking at doing that, and it's going to be a while before that is. So, they're saying maybe even 12 months before anything gets injected into a poultry. That's what we're hearing.
Yeah. But thank you for that update. Somebody here, you wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
For AI vaccines, is there any specific seasons to take it up regionally? Seasons like summer,
He wants to know if there's a
winter.
specific season to vaccinate for.
So, good
Where
question.
you would feel it would be more effective?
Yeah, good question. If you're talking about emergency vaccination, no, of course, you vaccinate when you feel so pressed by the disease or you're so scared that you want to vaccinate. In terms of preventive vaccination, you want, of course, to reach your immunity at the migration season. So for a Northern Hemisphere country, it would be that to get your immunity, let's say in October, November, just by now, a bit before now, to be protected when the migrating birds show up and are around. So that would be important. Now, with the quantity, as I said, you need to vaccinate your population in its entirety. So it's impossible to get everybody vaccinated at the same time unless private farmers do it. Because in Europe, we have teams moving from one farm to another to vaccinate, and that takes, of course, quite a while.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, I mean, we used to have a certain time when we used to have the problem, but I think it's not, that's not relevant anymore, I think. So I think following a schedule, I think is important, I think is maybe the only way to deal with that. And so I want to tell you a funny story. When, I think in 15 or something, when and please correct me if I'm wrong, when the bird flu had first come in US in Iowa, and they were surprised, and I know it started and all that, and then they have to cull, right? And they're not prepared for that. You can't prepare yourself to cull 50 million birds in a few weeks. And you know, and then I heard one of the places it was getting, the infection was spreading, was all the guys meeting in the pubs in the evening. You know, and because all the guys all day they're working and they're going to a pub, or I mean, it's not, you know, and meeting up, and then that's also how it was started spreading. So I think, and that's the nature of the beast, right? We have to understand, in many ways, biosecurity, to me, is still the main the silver bullet. And of course, vaccination will definitely support us and help us. But I think I think in India especially, I don't think we take biosecurity seriously. Yeah.
And that touches, of course, as well, contact with other animals. As you all know, we had HPAI in dairy cows in the US. Now it's really coming down. But there's been cases of workers transmitting AI from dairy to poultry farms, and the contrary, I suppose, might have been true as well. Any intimate contacts between poultry and cattle is to avoid, because frankly said, you know, we had probably 2 or 3 events of contamination in the US, single events that happened, as far as we can guess. So it takes only one teat of a buffalo dipping into some contaminated water to get something totally out of control. That's a guess, because we don't know exactly how it happened, but you know, it shows you how biosecurity in all dimensions is important.
Yeah. I mean, I have a funny story about that. Maybe later on, it's not probably appropriate to say on stage. But so I think with that, does anybody else have any questions? I mean, Olivier is of course present around for us to talk about during lunch or dinner also. Yeah, please go ahead. Can you introduce yourself, please? The mic is here in the front.
Good evening. Myself, Dr. Srinivas. What is your opinion on vaccination after outbreak?
Sorry?
What is your opinion on vaccination during outbreak?
A vaccination during outbreak?
Yes.
Probably Vitor or somebody else would be a better person to answer that later. I think, I mean, do you want to answer that?
I can just say that it can be done. I wonder if the disadvantages don't outweigh the advantages, in so much that if you have workers coming to vaccinate farms close to an outbreak, you increase the risk of transmitting the virus, because you have a lot of people coming and going in your farm. So it can be modeled, it can be done. I've not seen much of it in AI, and frankly said, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, I think you're too late anyway. But I know it's in the middle of that. I tell you not to do something, it'll not be smart either. But I think it's always better that you do preventive. And maybe later on, Prasad or somebody, or during the final this thing, we can discuss that again. But I'll remember to ask that question of Vitor, and maybe we can have somebody like Prasad also come and answer, because he's more on a field practitioner dealing with that every day. Yeah? Okay. So thank you, Olivier. Thank you very much. That was very insightful. I think I myself learned a lot. Thank you very much. And again, as I said, Olivier is around. all the evening, people can please come and ask him. As I said, when he says, when you hear white, he means wild. So remember that. And I don't know some other French words. I don't know. I'm just joking. So thank you, Olivier.